Royal Guard moves in. After Princess Charlotte orders, arrest her. She attacked my little brother. It was a crisp spring evening in London, and the royal family was preparing for a special event at a lavish venue. The place was buzzing with excitement, filled with royals, dignitaries, and celebrities, all gathered to celebrate a milestone that was meant to bring everyone together. Princess Charlotte and her younger brother, Prince Louis, were in a private section of the Grand Hall, surrounded by their closest family members and a few trusted aides. They were there to enjoy the festivities without the heavy gaze of the media, a rare opportunity to have some time away from the public eye. For Princess Charlotte, this event was more than just another royal gathering. It was a chance to bond with her little brother, to protect him in ways that only an older sibling could. Charlotte had always been known for her maturity and her caring nature, even at a young age. It wasn't unusual for her to take on a protective role, especially when it came to Louis. He was her little brother, and she was determined to look out for him no matter what. As the evening unfolded, the crowd in the hall grew more festive. Music played in the background, the laughter of guests filled the air, and the scent of fresh flowers and fine food drifted through the rooms. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a night of celebration. But none of them knew that this night would soon take a dangerous turn, one that none of them could have predicted. At first, it was all so calm. The children were playing together, and the royal parents were chatting with their guests. Princess Charlotte was keeping a close eye on her little brother, as always. Louis, still quite young, was wandering around with his usual curiosity, a slight mischief in his eyes as he explored the space. He wasn't far from his sister, but Charlotte was never one to let her guard down, even in the safest of places. Then, out of nowhere, a disturbance began to ripple through the crowd. It started off small, at first, just a few voices raised in confusion. No one really knew what was happening. The guests at the event went from enjoying their time to becoming increasingly nervous. There was a woman, a stranger, who had somehow made her way past security. No one knew who she was, and her presence immediately sent a wave of unease through the room. The woman's eyes were wild, her expression filled with desperation. Her movements were erratic, almost as if she was searching for something, someone. As she got closer to where the royal children were standing, the tension in the room escalated. Guests started whispering to each other, and some tried to alert the security detail. But it was too late. The woman made a beeline toward Prince Louis, who was still a little ways away from Charlotte. In an instant, she reached him. It was as though time slowed down for Princess Charlotte. She saw it happening but couldn't react fast enough to stop it. The woman pushed Louis aside, her hands grabbing him in a way that was both startling and frightening. The shock of the moment left Louis stumbling, his little body shaken by the suddenness of the attack. Charlotte's heart stopped for a moment. She could hardly believe her eyes. Her baby brother, her responsibility, was in danger. She wasn't just the older sister anymore. In that moment, she became his protector, his shield from harm. It was as if everything she had been taught about duty and loyalty to her family kicked in all at once. Without thinking, Charlotte's instincts took over. She immediately screamed for help, her voice cutting through the noise of the crowd. She shouted for the security team, her eyes never leaving the sight of Louis and the stranger who had come out of nowhere. The guards, who had been monitoring the event from a distance, were already on their way, but Charlotte's alertness had been the first line of defense. Her cry for help was loud enough that it cut through the chaos and brought the guards rushing in. As the guards arrived, they quickly moved to restrain the woman, but not before she had caused a small scene. Louis was frightened, his small body trembling as he was rushed away from the situation. He didn't fully understand what had just happened, but the look on Charlotte's face made him feel safer. Her protective instinct had kicked in, and she was making sure he was far away from danger. At that moment, everything else seemed to blur. The noise of the party, the guests' laughter, the music, everything faded away as Charlotte's focus was solely on her brother. She was aware of the guards around her, of the flashing lights of cameras, and the whispers that were beginning to rise around them. But none of that mattered. What mattered most was Louis' safety, and she would do anything to make sure he was okay. The woman, now restrained by the guards, began to struggle, but it was clear she was disoriented, perhaps not fully aware of the consequences of her actions. Charlotte noticed this and felt a sense of relief mixed with a pang of sympathy. The woman seemed confused, almost lost in her own mind. The guards were doing their best to handle the situation, but Charlotte couldn't shake the image of her little brother's face. He had been scared, and that was something Charlotte couldn't simply forget. The room, which had been filled with joy and excitement just moments before, was now filled with an eerie silence. People were watching, some with concern, others with disbelief. How could something like this happen in the heart of the royal family's event? The confusion was palpable, but Charlotte remained calm, trying her best to soothe Louis as the security team took control of the situation. Charlotte's eyes never left her brother as he was escorted away from the scene. The royal guards, who had acted quickly and efficiently, took the woman into custody. There was no question about what needed to be done now. The woman was no longer a part of the celebration, and Charlotte had made sure that her family's safety would be maintained. But the weight of what had just happened hung heavily in the air. As the scene began to settle, Princess Charlotte stood tall, her eyes still on Louis, who was now being comforted by his parents. She had done what she had to do. She had protected her family, and she had done it without hesitation. But deep down, she knew that this incident would stay with her forever. It wasn't just a moment of fear. It was a moment that had defined her role as a protector, a leader, and a sister. From that day forward, the world would see Princess Charlotte in a different light, not just as a royal, but as someone who had the strength and bravery to protect those she loved, no matter the cost. In the aftermath of the incident, the royal family found themselves thrust into the eye of the media storm. The royal palace, which had always maintained a serene and controlled atmosphere, was now filled with an undeniable tension. The public, and especially the press, had a million questions. What had happened? Why had a stranger managed to get so close to the royal family? What led to this chaotic event? The media outlets began running stories with headline after headline, each one questioning the safety of the royal family and the state of their security protocols. But inside the royal household, the immediate priority was not the media, nor the press conferences that were sure to follow. It was about making sure that Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis, and the rest of the family were okay. The guards had moved quickly, but it was still a traumatic experience for the young prince. The royal family's priority was to ensure their children's safety and peace of mind, as well as to get to the bottom of what had happened. Princess Charlotte had remained remarkably calm during the whole ordeal. Her actions had been swift and decisive, but behind the scenes, she had her own thoughts and worries. She knew how much the event had shaken her little brother. Louis was confused, frightened, and trying to make sense of what had happened. Though he was young, the memory of the woman's sudden appearance, her rough push, and the chaos that followed lingered in his mind. It wasn't just the physical jolt that had rattled him. It was the fear of not knowing what had just transpired. Charlotte had tried to calm him immediately, but even her reassuring words couldn't undo the shock. In the quiet of their royal residence, the family huddled together in a private room, far from the prying eyes of the press. Charlotte's parents, the Prince and Princess of Wales, had ensured that both Charlotte and Louis were in a safe space. They spent the first few moments offering comfort, trying to ease the tension that had gripped their hearts. The royal family wasn't used to events like this. The calm, composed world they typically inhabited had been disrupted in an instant. But despite the chaos, they knew they had to focus on one thing: their children's well-being. Charlotte, though young, had proven to be more than just the caring big sister. She was now the voice of reason for the family. As her parents discussed the next steps, Charlotte quietly reassured her little brother. Louis, sitting on her lap, looked up at her with wide, uncertain eyes, seeking comfort from his older sister. Charlotte held him close, brushing a strand of hair from his face, doing everything she could to reassure him. Her calm demeanor had already begun to ease the tension in the room. Louis, who had been holding back tears, slowly began to calm down in the safety of Charlotte's embrace. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the royal household security team was working relentlessly to piece together what had happened. The woman who had caused the commotion was quickly detained and placed under investigation. It was clear that she had somehow managed to slip through the tight security measures. How had she gotten so close? The questions were endless, and the palace security team was determined to find answers. But as the investigation unfolded, it became apparent that the woman was struggling with severe mental health issues. Her actions weren't calculated. They were driven by confusion, a lack of understanding, and perhaps a desperate need for attention. The palace was working alongside the authorities to determine the woman's identity and background. They learned that she had no clear ties to any criminal organizations or groups. Her entry into the royal event appeared to have been the result of a personal, troubling crisis. In many ways, it was a tragic situation. But no matter the reasons behind her actions, the security breach had shaken the royal family to its core. They would need to ensure something like this never happened again. As news of the incident spread, the media began to focus on Princess Charlotte's quick reaction. It didn't take long for the press to recognize her as not just a young princess, but a composed and capable leader in her own right. Journalists praised her for her swift thinking in alerting the security team. In interviews, experts said that her calm response had likely saved her brother from further harm. Some even went as far as calling her the protector of her family. The attention, though somewhat uncomfortable for Charlotte, was a recognition of her bravery and the role she had played in ensuring her brother's safety. But for Charlotte, the real reward was seeing her brother slowly begin to return to his playful self. Over the next few days, she remained by his side, keeping a close watch on him and making sure he felt secure. They were both still processing what had happened, but Charlotte made sure to keep him distracted, taking him to the gardens for walks and playing his favorite games. Even in the wake of the frightening event, she continued to be his rock. Charlotte knew that she could never fully erase the memory of that day, but she was determined to help him heal from it. As the investigation continued, the authorities worked to piece together the woman's troubled past. It became clear that she had been struggling with personal issues that led to the incident. She was eventually placed under psychiatric care, receiving the help she needed to recover. It was a difficult decision for the royal family to make, but they knew that the woman's actions, while frightening, came from a place of deep distress. In the end, it wasn't just a matter of protecting the family. It was about ensuring that the woman received the care she needed. In the days following the event, the royal family remained united. They were shaken, but they understood that they had to move forward. The royal couple, Prince William and Kate Middleton, made a statement thanking the security team for their quick actions and praised the public for their understanding and support. They also expressed their deep gratitude to their children for their resilience. Charlotte, in particular, had demonstrated a level of maturity and strength beyond her years. Though the event had rocked the royal family, they knew they couldn't let it define them. They had to focus on the future, on the safety and well-being of their children. Princess Charlotte, who had been the pillar of strength during the crisis, was slowly coming to terms with the incident. As a family, they vowed to learn from the experience, to strengthen their security measures, and to never forget the bravery of the young princess who, in a moment of fear, had shown the world the true meaning of protection. In the days that followed the frightening event, Princess Charlotte became more than just a protector in her own family's eyes. She had proven to be a steady leader, displaying a calm that exceeded expectations for someone so young. But despite her outward composure, Charlotte couldn't shake the memory of that terrifying moment. She would often find herself looking over at her little brother, Prince Louis, who had become more withdrawn than usual. The playful energy he once had was replaced with cautious glances and moments of uncertainty. Charlotte noticed this, and she knew it was her responsibility as his older sister to help him heal. The royal family, though always careful to maintain their dignity in public, knew they had to address the situation privately and within their own home. They had lived through a public life filled with scrutiny and attention, but the events of the past few days had shown them that sometimes the most important moments happen far away from the cameras and bright lights. Princess Charlotte took it upon herself to make sure her little brother was all right. Despite being only a few years older than him, she understood the importance of offering comfort. She would often sit by his side, playing his favorite games or simply talking to him. She knew Louis loved to hear stories, so she began to tell him the kinds of tales that made him laugh. She'd detail him stories of their adventures in the royal gardens, of trips to the zoo, and of the family pets. Each story was meant to bring back that sense of safety and normalcy. Charlotte's natural warmth and nurturing spirit worked wonders on Louis. Slowly but surely, the little boy started to come out of his shell again, his laughter slowly returning, a sound that warmed Charlotte's heart. But it wasn't just Louis who needed reassurance. Charlotte herself had to process what had happened. The press had swarmed, asking questions and offering their praise, but she felt a quiet heaviness inside. It wasn't just the public attention that troubled her. It was the deep sense of responsibility she felt. That night when the woman had approached Louis, Charlotte had acted instinctively, but as time passed, she realized the true weight of her actions. She had saved her brother, but what would have happened if she hadn't been there? What if the woman's intentions had been darker, more malicious? Those questions began to gnaw at Charlotte. Her parents, Prince William and Kate, understood what she was going through. They too had been shaken by the event, but they had their own way of processing the situation. They reassured Charlotte that what happened wasn't her fault, that she had acted bravely, and her quick thinking had made all the difference. But they also knew that their children, especially Charlotte, would need time to fully understand the emotional impact of the incident. The royal family worked hard to create a sense of calm in their home, finding comfort in each other's presence. Despite all of the comforting words, Charlotte felt that she needed to do something more. She wanted to make sure that such an incident could never happen again. Though only a young princess, she already understood the importance of taking charge when it came to protecting those she loved. She was determined to learn from the experience and become more aware of the security measures that surrounded her family. To that end, Charlotte began asking questions about the security protocols in place at royal events. She wanted to understand how the woman had been able to slip past the guards unnoticed. At first, her parents were hesitant to talk about such details with her. After all, she was still a child. But they soon realized that Charlotte had a genuine curiosity and a deep sense of responsibility. Prince William and Kate began to involve her in more age-appropriate discussions about security. They explained the systems in place to protect their family, making Charlotte feel more empowered. It was important for her to know that she wasn't helpless, that the royal family had everything under control. Charlotte's involvement in these discussions gave her a sense of security, and in turn, it helped her begin to reassure Louis, too. The young prince had started to trust the people around him again, but he still seemed hesitant when it came to being in public spaces. Charlotte would often remind him of the guards, of their unshakable presence, and how they would always be there to protect him. Her words were comforting, but it was her actions that truly made a difference. When Charlotte was around, Louis felt safe. He knew that his sister would always stand by him, no matter what. The royal family's efforts to return to normalcy were not only focused on security measures, but also on ensuring that their children's emotional needs were met. Both Charlotte and Louis needed time to return to their carefree ways, and their parents made sure to give them that space. They spent more time together as a family, doing things that they loved, visiting the countryside, spending time with their pets, and enjoying simple moments that helped them feel connected. It wasn't just about overcoming the incident. It was about healing together as a family. As time passed, the public's attention shifted. The media that had once been obsessed with every detail of the incident started to focus on other stories. But within the royal household, life continued at its usual pace, albeit with a new understanding of the vulnerabilities that came with public life. Charlotte's courage and composure had been tested, but she had emerged stronger, and so had her family. One evening, as Charlotte and Louis played in the royal gardens, Charlotte looked over at her younger brother, who was laughing with joy. The events of the past week had not been forgotten, but they had become a part of their story, a story of resilience and love. It was a reminder of the strength that ran through their family, of how they supported each other through thick and thin. Charlotte knew that no matter what happened in the future, her family would always be there for one another, just as she had been there for Louis. For Princess Charlotte, the incident had been an eye-opening experience. She had learned that being a protector wasn't just about physical safety. It was also about emotional support, empathy, and the strength to carry on, even in the face of fear. And though she was still a young girl, Charlotte understood that this experience had shaped her in ways she would continue to learn from in the years to come. As for Louis, the little boy who had once been so frightened, he was beginning to find his sense of joy again. He trusted that his sister would always be there for him, and that was all he needed to feel safe. The royal family had weathered the storm together, and now they were stronger than ever. As the days continued to pass, the royal family slowly returned to their usual routines. The unsettling incident that had shaken them so deeply seemed to fade into the background, yet the emotional scars remained. especially for the younger members of the family. The public's attention, which had initially been overwhelming, began to shift as the media moved on to other stories. But for Princess Charlotte and her family, the process of healing was far from over. While the rest of the world seemed to forget, the royal family worked to rebuild their sense of normalcy, both in their private lives and in the way they engaged with the public. Princess Charlotte, though still young, was starting to understand just how much the world was watching them. She was aware of the growing attention she had received in the wake of the incident, but it didn't change the way she felt about her role within the family. For Charlotte, the praise and recognition from the media weren't what mattered. What mattered was the well-being of her little brother and the sense of safety she could offer him. The world had witnessed her bravery, but behind closed doors, it was her love for her family that truly guided her. The press had been full of stories praising her calm, collected response to the situation. They spoke about how, despite her young age, she had acted as the protector of her family when chaos threatened to engulf them. Journalists used words like courage, maturity, and strength to describe her. To the outside world, Charlotte had become a symbol of resilience, a young royal with the ability to lead and protect when called upon. Yet, even with all the attention, Charlotte stayed grounded. She didn't let the praise get to her head. Instead, she focused on what she could control: her family's safety, her own well-being, and her brother's peace of mind. As the days turned into weeks, the royal family began to resume their public appearances. But they were cautious, taking extra steps to ensure their children's safety. The palace security team reviewed their protocols, making sure that such an incident would never happen again. New measures were put in place, and the royal family became more involved in the decisions surrounding their protection. Charlotte, although still a child, was more aware of the security around her than ever before. She started asking questions about how they ensured their safety at public events and how the guards were trained. Her curiosity, though simple, showed her growing sense of responsibility and maturity. One day, during a casual meeting with her parents, Charlotte asked, "How do we make sure no one can get too close to us at the next event?" Her question wasn't out of fear, but out of a desire to understand how things worked. She was determined to learn, to be prepared for whatever might come next. Her parents, recognizing the seriousness with which she took her role, explained in simple terms how security measures were put in place to protect them. They spoke about the guards, the scanning processes, and how important it was to have a clear understanding of the risks involved. Charlotte listened intently, asking follow-up questions, always eager to learn more. Though the royal family's life appeared to return to normal on the outside, Charlotte and her parents knew it would take time for the emotional wounds of the incident to heal. Louis, though more cheerful than before, still had moments of hesitation. Sometimes, when he was in a crowd, he would cling to Charlotte's side, seeking her comfort and reassurance. She didn't mind. She understood that her brother needed time to adjust. She had been his protector during that frightening moment, and now she continued to offer him the same protection in the quieter moments of their daily lives. Their bond had grown stronger, and Charlotte was more than willing to stand by him, no matter what. The royal family also began to focus on their own emotional healing. Prince William and Kate Middleton were deeply affected by what had happened, but they did everything they could to shield their children from the worst of it. They made sure to spend quality time as a family, engaging in simple activities that brought them joy. They took family walks, visited parks, and enjoyed moments of calm away from the public eye. It was their way of returning to the peace they once knew. In these moments, they were just a family, parents, siblings, enjoying each other's company without the pressure of their royal roles. But the media continued to watch. While the royal family tried to move past the incident, the press wasn't quite ready to let go. The story of Princess Charlotte's bravery lingered in the public's memory, and it was only a matter of time before it resurfaced. The royal family knew they couldn't hide from the attention forever, but they also knew how to handle it with grace. In public, they showed a united front. They presented a picture of strength, showing the world that, no matter the challenges they faced, they could weather any storm together. Princess Charlotte, who had always been in the spotlight to some extent, found herself under more scrutiny than before. But rather than feeling overwhelmed, she took it all in stride. She wasn't interested in the fame. She didn't seek out the attention or the praise. What mattered most to her was the knowledge that her family was safe, that she had done what she could to protect her brother, and that they were all recovering in their own way. As the months went by, Charlotte's actions and her ability to handle the pressure became a part of her growing reputation. She was no longer just the charming young princess. She was someone who could rise to the occasion, even when faced with unexpected challenges. Her bravery had been recognized, but it was her maturity that truly set her apart. Charlotte was learning what it meant to be a leader, not just in times of crisis, but in everyday life as well. Her parents continued to guide her, helping her balance the demands of her royal duties with the normal joys of childhood. Charlotte would often be seen playing with her friends, enjoying time with her family, and participating in activities that reminded her of the simple pleasures of being a child. Yet, in the back of her mind, she knew that things would never be quite the same. She had seen firsthand how quickly things could change, how fragile the sense of security could be. But rather than letting fear control her, Charlotte used this experience as a foundation for her future. She became even more dedicated to her family's safety, to her role as a protector, and to her own growth as a future leader. It was clear that the royal family had come out of this ordeal stronger, with a new sense of unity and resilience. They had faced a difficult challenge, but they had overcome it together. And through it all, Princess Charlotte had proven herself to be more than just a royal figurehead. She had shown the world what it meant to be brave, compassionate, and unwavering in the face of fear. Her actions had left an indelible mark, not just on her family, but on the world that watched her rise to the occasion. As time passed, life in the royal family slowly returned to what could be considered normal. The events that had shaken them all seemed to fade into the background, yet the effects lingered, hidden beneath the surface. The royal family had always been seen as a picture of composure, grace, and unity. But the incident had shown them that beneath the calm exterior, there were real emotions, real fears, and real challenges. For Princess Charlotte, the lessons learned from that event stayed with her. The bravery she had shown in the face of danger had left an impression on everyone, but it was her quiet reflection in the days that followed that truly defined her. While the world had seen her as a protector, she had also become a young girl learning how to deal with her own emotions, her own thoughts about safety, and the role she played within her family. Charlotte had always known the importance of family, but after the incident, that understanding grew deeper. She continued to show maturity far beyond her years, but there were still moments when the weight of everything she had experienced would hit her. She wasn't a superhero, and she didn't have all the answers. She was still a child, with dreams and worries like any other. But the difference now was that she had seen, firsthand, how fragile life could be and how important it was to protect the ones you loved. That knowledge was now a part of her, something that would stay with her forever. Princess Charlotte had always had a bond with her little brother, Prince Louis, but now that bond seemed even stronger. The bond between them had been tested, and they had both come through it. Charlotte remained ever watchful over him, but Louis was starting to feel more at ease in the world around him. The fear that had once gripped him was slowly starting to fade, and though he would never forget what had happened, he learned to trust his family again. He knew that Charlotte would always be there to look after him, just as she had that night. The royal family continued with their duties, appearing in public and participating in the events that had been planned months in advance. But each of them carried the memory of the incident, the small moments that made them appreciate the calm and peace they had once taken for granted. The family became closer, their moments of joy more cherished than ever before. They had learned to take nothing for granted, to appreciate the everyday moments that were sometimes overshadowed by the demands of their public lives. In public, Charlotte was the picture of poise. She smiled for the cameras, attended royal functions, and participated in the activities expected of her. But those who knew her best saw a change in her. She had grown, not just physically, but emotionally. She had gained a deeper understanding of responsibility, not just as a member of the royal family, but as a human being who was part of something much larger than herself. She had seen the impact of her actions, and in the process, she had learned the true weight of leadership. The role she played in protecting her brother had opened her eyes to what it meant to be a leader in a world that was constantly changing. Charlotte's parents, Prince William and Kate Middleton, had noticed the transformation in their daughter. They were proud of how Charlotte had handled the situation. but they also recognized the need to give her space to grow and process everything that had happened. They had always tried to keep their children's lives as normal as possible, shielding them from the pressures of public life. But after the incident, they had become even more determined to protect their children's emotional well-being. They made sure to spend time away from the media, enjoying quiet family moments at home, in the countryside, or wherever they could find peace. Despite everything, life for the royal family had to continue. Public appearances, charity events, and royal duties awaited them. But there was a new sense of caution, a new understanding of what it meant to be in the spotlight. It wasn't just about the glamour and the attention anymore. It was about safety, security, and making sure their children felt loved and protected at all times. The royal family's priority, above all else, was the well-being of their children. And Charlotte, having experienced the reality of danger so closely, became even more protective of her younger siblings. Over the months, Princess Charlotte began to take on more responsibilities, both within her family and in her public life. She became more involved in the causes that were close to her heart, including charity work, environmental awareness, and children's welfare. Her natural empathy and understanding of others made her a perfect fit for these roles. People began to see that Charlotte wasn't just a princess in name. She was a leader in the making, someone who cared deeply about the world around her. But there were still moments of normalcy, too. Charlotte continued to play with her siblings, visit her favorite places, and laugh with her parents. The royal family made sure to nurture these moments, providing their children with experiences that allowed them to feel like kids, not just royal figures. These moments became even more precious in the aftermath of the incident, when life had felt uncertain for a time. They understood that it was important to hold on to these moments of joy and lightness, even in a world that could sometimes feel heavy. Princess Charlotte's story became an inspiration to many. Her bravery in the face of fear, her strength in the aftermath of a traumatic event, and her unwavering dedication to her family were qualities that people admired. She became a symbol of resilience, not just for the royal family, but for anyone facing their own challenges. Her story was one of growth, of rising to meet the unexpected, and of showing that even in the toughest of times, it was possible to remain strong and caring. For Charlotte, the journey was just beginning. The incident had been a defining moment in her life, but it had also taught her valuable lessons. She knew that she would continue to grow, to learn, and to face whatever challenges came her way. She had seen what it meant to protect her loved ones, and she understood the responsibility that came with that role. She would carry that lesson with her for the rest of her life, as she moved forward into a future that was sure to be filled with more challenges, but also more opportunities to make a difference. And as she stood by her family, watching them grow stronger with each passing day, Charlotte knew one thing for sure. No matter what the future held, she would always be there for them. She would be the protector, the guide, and the leader they needed. The royal family, though shaken by the events that had unfolded, had come out the other side stronger than ever before, united in their love for each other and their determination to face whatever came next together.